Hello? Hello?
Yes. We'll be starting our session exactly by 10:30. I request all the speakers to turn off their video and be ready.
LiFE, I think I'll go without the video, but
Oh,
I'm perfectly fine speaking. Yeah.
okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Apart from this Zoom session, we are also live streaming our entire session through YouTube channel, and many of them have joined through our YouTube channel also. So, a warm welcome to all. Thank you for joining us today on this beautiful morning. I'm Mohammad Naif, and it's my pleasure to be your moderator for the second episode of our fortnightly YouTube webinar. We have a great program lined up for you with insightful discussion and thought-provoking presentations from our esteemed guests. So let's start and make the most out of this wonderful opportunity to learn and connect. Let's take a moment to welcome our distinguished speaker who have taken time off their busy schedules to share their knowledge and expertise with us. It's an absolute pleasure to have Srimati Sudhi Sinha, Manager Policy Outreach Chindan, Environment Research and Action Group, Srimati Sirisha Chandana, Vice President Learning and Development Sustainability at the Indian Hotels Company Limited IHCL, Srimati Shivyanath, travel writer, sustainability speaker, and a consultant, also the founder of Climate Conscious Travel, and Srimati Lakshmi Selvakumaran, Head of Experiences, Green Trails, Team India Heights, and also a TEDx speaker. I would also like to greet all other attendees who have taken your auspicious time to spend with us. All forms of tourism must be sustainable. The Ministry of Tourism has launched the National Strategy for Sustainable Tourism on 29th April 2022 with an aim to mainstream sustainability in Indian tourism sector to ensure a more resilient, inclusive, carbon neutral and resource efficient tourism while safeguarding natural and cultural resources. In, in the National Strategy for Sustainable Tourism, the ministry has identified 7 strategic pillars for the development of sustainable tourism, in which one key pillar is environmental sustainability, which will be focusing on optimal use of environmental resources that constitute key element in tourism development. Under the G20 presidency, green tourism has been established as one of the five key areas of focus, which highlights the significance of the initiatives taken by the government of India for greening the tourism industry, such as this webinar. The tourism sector generates significant amount of plastic pollution, and the disposal of these waste is crucial problem in the tourism industry. However, by adopting responsible practices for reducing plastic pollutions, the tourism industry can become a catalyst for change and present innovative solutions to address plastic pollution. In line with this issue, today's webinar will discuss on the topic Travel for Life, responsible practices for reducing plastic pollution in tourism industry. Today's four distinguished speakers will address how industry-wide behavior changes on both the demand and the supply sides of the tourism industry can reduce plastic pollution. We will discuss the stakeholders' role in implementation of responsible practices for reducing plastic pollution, ways to reduce plastic pollutions through a responsible consumption, and the alternative solution to single-use plastics in the industry. Before that, the structure for today's webinar will be divided into two parts. The first part we will focus on exchange of viewpoints from our four eminent speakers, followed by a panel discussion and the ending notes. Let me take my privilege to invite the first speaker of the session, Srimati Sudhi Sinha, Manager Policy and Outreach of Chindan Environmental Research Action Group. Sudhi Sinha leads research and policy advocacy works at Chintan. She has represented India in G20 summit in Shanghai. She has pioneered advocacy research on issues such as child safety, gender-based violence, plastic waste recycling, and climate resilience. At Chintan, she works on issues like inclusive air pollution policies, circular economy for plastics, and the transition for vulnerable communities like waste pickers. Let us listen to her expertise and the experiences she has to share with us. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Naif. Namaskar to all. Um, I'm coming from the development sector, and I'm speaking as someone who is a part of the civil society organization sphere, and I'll address the question of sustainable or near plastic free tourism from that regard. So first of all, when we talk about tourism and plastic free tourism, we need to address the question of waste itself. Because plastic, and the largest challenge with plastic is that plastic is a kind of a product or an entity that kind of, when it becomes waste, you it kind of degrades and it degenerates, but it never really goes. It turns into microplastics, and as much as one credit card per day is what research shows that all of us intake in form of microplastics, and per week. So that's quite scary, because plastic really is of course dangerous for the environment, but it's also really bad for health, and that's something that's not highlighted. So tourism is of course an industry where there is a lot of involvement of plastics, but to move away from plastics, the behavior change or the policy change itself has to be at a wider level. So it involves, say, industry in terms of producers of plastics, or it involves the government itself, and government at different levels, where the urban local bodies are responsible for waste management in a city. So when we look at plastic in that sense, it's intersectoral. It's something that is very much produced on the supply side. It's upstream, we have to look at its downstream, how consumers use it, and what happens to it when it becomes waste. But specifically to the tourism industry, and I will take an example of some work we did in Uttar Pradesh. So we were working with the UNEP on a marine plastic litter initiative, and and what we did is that we wanted to identify the key stakeholders in the city of Agra, for instance, which is a high tourist, high density place. And we found that the tourism industry itself was not just one of the biggest producers of plastic waste, but it could also become leading factor in which, if we made interventions, that plastic waste in Agra could actually be reduced. So if there is a plastic producer or a polluter of plastic, then if we make the correct interventions, they can actually become the biggest promoters of plastic reduction. So I view tourism industry as that. So tourism industry can really take the lead, and how to do so is that you really have to kind of talk about behavior change, but talk about behavior change in a scientific manner. So currently, plastic is not connected with health at all. So we need to say that, okay, plastics impacts health, and that is not currently the narrative. So if we start talking about the health impacts of plastics, just the way as we talk about air pollution and its health impacts, it will make a difference. And that kind of scientific understanding and a solution based understanding needs to be provided uh, when you're training stakeholders like the tourism industry, the departments of tourism in the government, the municipal bodies. So you have to bring in scientific training, and that's one part of it. And the second part of it is, why do people use plastics? People use plastics because a, there are no cost effective alternatives. There's a big class issue when we are talking about plastics. Okay, you can talk about, if I am an elite tourist and I go live in a Taj, I will be able to find alternatives. But if I am a tourist who is not going to the Taj, or someone who is, say, a normal, like any of us middle class tourist, then what happens to, we use plastics. We don't go to a Taj to live there on every trip. We kind of, we look for hotels, or we look for Airbnbs, for instance. We look for cost effective places to live at. And if we look at these places, they're not places that are always affording alternative materials. So it is a class issue, and that is something that needs to be addressed. So yes, talk about alternatives, but we need to talk about alternatives that are sustainable, but that are also available to everybody at a low cost. And that's not just the people or the tourists themselves, but to the hotels, to the hospitality industry. So we need to address the different grades of the class factor in it when we talk about alternatives, and we need to talk about scientific solutions where we say that this has health impacts and it is a health emergency as well. So I think I'll stop here for now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for those insightful words. Next, I would like to welcome Srimati Sirisha Chandana. Ma'am, Sirisha ma'am, in her current role of talent development, she also leads the sustainability and CSR function for the Indian Hotels and Company Limited. With 20 plus years of experience, she had worked in multiple locations across India, USA, and Australia, and in for IHCL. As a lead for sustainability and CSR function, she has worked in many programs to address various environmental concerns, including energy use, water conservation, reaction to pollution, reduction of pollution and waste, and focusing on preserving the biodiversity. She is an avid traveler, drawing insights from different cultures and cuisines, and involved sports enthusiast. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Naish. I should have given you a briefer introduction. You read out everything that I gave you, but thank you very much either ways. Yeah. And Shruti, thank you very much for taking the lead and laying out the perspectives. And I'm really glad actually to see four ladies on this particular panel. I think it's a great start for us to want to do things slightly differently. And coming to this topic of entire piece around sustainability and waste, I think we are taking the great steps towards this end. I think of what I see across the world, India is making strides in this particular place because we are not yet one of those countries. If you look at it from a per capita waste which is created, we are not as high as many of the European and North American countries would be. From that perspective, I think we are early in starting to take the right kind of steps. This webinar is probably one of those ways by which we are taking the steps in the right way, because it's important to actually start having discussions, lots of discussions around it with all kinds of people. Yeah, because the root of it, like Shruti mentioned, is about how do you impact behaviors of everyone who's concerned. So whether it is corporates, whether it is policymakers, whether it is the consumers, whether it is the suppliers, partners, vendors. So every different stakeholder actually has a huge role to play in how is it that we are going to manage this particular situation. So whether it is through webinars or whether it is through multiple ways of communication, education is going to be extremely important to be able to arrest what we are doing, where we are doing. So I would say that, maybe from a policy perspective, this should be a mandated, not just as a like how we have 10 bag-free days, which have been announced by the education, through the education policy. There should be some kind of a piece which should get mandated, which is serious stuff around sustainability in schools, not just a nice to do thing or not just an activity, but it should be a serious subject which should be introduced, because this is not just going to get arrested at our levels. The behavior change of adults has to be influenced by the behavior change which is questioned by young people in the community, by school-going children in the community who question their parents and adults around the place for the choices that they are actually wanting to make. Yes, having said that, I feel there is work that needs to be done across the stakeholders in the community, and it should start with education. Taking the point of view of a corporate, I think, yes, this year SEBI has mandated the top 1,000 companies across the country to actually do the BRSR reporting, which from the erstwhile business responsibility reporting has extended now to the business responsibility and sustainability reporting. So that means that it is no longer a nice to do things, and the top 1,000 companies have to mandatorily start reporting everything under the space of ESG, and primarily the environment piece is the largest one which sits under it, to do with energy, waste, water, and biodiversity, air quality related disclosures. Yes, human capital, etc. Much of that also sits under the social piece, but because today's discussion is more around the environment stewardship piece, I want to kind of stay focused on that piece today. I think it's a fantastic start. What does it do? It forces at least the top 1,000 companies, which are in many ways influencers in policy making, in how certain choices are shaped in the community, to just measure the impact they are having in the space of quality, a kind of energy which is being consumed, amount of waste which is being sent into landfills, what is the state of water recycling, and how much water are we withdrawing, fresh water we are withdrawing. I think it's important that everyone starts. One, it has forced everyone to start looking at the numbers. And two is that it has made many people get down to not just look at the data now, but to reflect, analyze, and say, hey, you know what, this is not looking great. Yeah, and it has made it has made a great case for every corporate to understand that if they want to sustain their business from a long-term perspective, then it becomes an absolute imperative that you address the queries and questions which are arising out of the energy, waste, water, biodiversity space. Yeah. Having said that, Tata Group is a company which is over 150 years old. Yeah, if a company is sustained 150 years old, you have to have your skin in the game. And if you want to be there another 150 years, then you have to have a, you have to operate from the space that, you are going to come around with sustainable practices. And to this effect, it means that not only as people in this space who want to take a leadership role, you have to be able to support everyone in the value chain to be able to make the right decisions. Shruti mentioned it correctly, what is in it for me? Every stakeholder asks you, why should I make the move? It's going to cost me, it's going to be tougher. There are many people who are in the plastics business who are probably not going to have a livelihood. How are we addressing these fears and challenges of people is also something that we must take into consideration, because, unlike large corporates which are thinking of sustainable businesses, simple individuals are only looking at their lifetime. They are only looking at how do I make ends meet for this year, maybe for the next decade, or maybe for my next generation, but they are not looking far ahead of that. So it is for large corporates to make sure that we are actually helping the entire value chain from the perspective of understanding what are the options, what are the different things that can be done, why is it important, like, the behaviors, why is it important for your health, for our health, for everyone's health. So addressing that, what's in it for me, why is it important, I think corporates definitely need to play a large role. I feel this entire disclosure piece is going to force everyone into playing a much larger role. There will be a movement around, not looking at short-term gains, but looking at it from a long-term perspective and saying that, what, we might be we are hospitality, we are supposed to be in a luxury space, but maybe, sustainability has to be made fashionable more than anything else. Yeah, there are people who are ready to pay a premium for sustainability. And that is what we have to do to the entire business. We have to make it we have to make it appealing for most people to be able to kind of take on this particular journey. I'll take a halt here, because getting into the details of the discussion, I think when we have questions coming towards us, I'll be in a better position to be able to answer any granular questioning, or I'll be happy to take a detailed line of depth related responding to a particular area. Does that work for you, Nais?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We have a representation from different stakeholders like hotel industry, tour operators, NGOs, and travel influence writers and all. So in our panel discussion session, we'll have a fruitful session.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So let us move on to our next speaker of the session, Dr. Lakshmi Selvakumaran. Lakshmi, ma'am, is a doctorate in mechanical engineering, but her interest in protecting the environment led her to India Hikes and eventually head the Green Trail stream. So Lakshmi and her team have pioneered the Green Trail initiatives, and the team under her leadership has came up with many initiatives to make trekking more sustainable in India. Lakshmi hopes to make these practices on norm how trekking is done in India. Let us take some insight from her how to tackle this plastic pollution issue in the industry. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Naeem. Good morning, everyone. So just to give a little bit of a background to go into the details of what I'm going to share, I come from India Hikes. We organize treks in the Himalayas. So we run treks in Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and in the Darjeeling, Sandakfu region, and Goichala. So one of the challenges that we very strongly face in propagating sustainable tourism, of course, is plastic, the problem of plastics, and how do we address plastic waste in general. To just give you an idea of what exactly are the biggest challenges, is that one of the biggest challenges is that for many trekkers who come on the trek or who come traveling to the trek, their main source of water is essentially plastic bottles that they usually tend to buy off of dabas. The second is also the biggest waste that is generated that we find on the trail is also plastic snacks. This includes the quintessential Maggie that has become kind of like a poster boy, poster child for having food in the mountains. Along with that, also other forms of biscuits, juice. These are the kind of main sources of plastics that we end up finding in these mountains when we go on the trek. Now, what are we doing about it? As an organization, we take about 20,000 trekkers to the mountains. We try to address this problem at the source. We educate our trekkers before they even come on the trek to not bring any packaged food with them. We insist on them carrying their own water bottles. And we also tell them and have a kind of like discussions on the trek to encourage them not to buy any kind of plastic packaged food on the trail in the dabas, and we kind of encourage them to rather buy things that they will not probably find anywhere else along the way. Now, these are some of the initiatives that we have been working on. However, we also have certain challenges in implementing these initiatives 100% within our own organization, let alone it being adopted as a general practice in the trekking field. And I want to address some of the challenges. The first challenge being is that even though we encourage trekkers to get their own water bottles, the quality of the water that they are going to get along the way is a challenge. There are not many water stations along the routes. Most of these places are remote villages. They don't have, and the quality of the water is not assured, which does make trekkers question whether they should go ahead and take water from the tap and directly drink it. So this is still one of the concerns, and that's one of the reasons why you still see some of them bringing Bisleri bottles or Aquafina bottles when they come on the trek. The second is one of the things that we find universally across all our treks is the ease of packaged food on the trek, and also the demand for the packaged food on the trek from the trekkers. This is an area where we are consciously working with the trekkers, trying to encourage them to try a local cuisine. We also try and work with dabas who we are able to collaborate with to help to kind of prepare menu that is very local to that region, so that the trekkers find an opportunity to try and experience the local food of the place. However, this is not universal, and perhaps this is something that also can be taken up as a initiative that can promote local food as an alternative to these fast food waste generating food practices. And outside that, I think one of the things that as an organization we also do is we encourage our trekkers to clean up the waste that they find on the trek. We use something called as an eco bag. We encourage trekkers to pick up waste. We also segregate the waste. However, as an organization, we put in a lot of our own money to segregate the waste, take it down all the way to a waste processing facility, which is usually in one of the main cities of the state. In fact, in Kashmir, we have yet to find a place where you can find a place where you can give away the recyclable waste. Now, these are very real challenges. These are very big challenges. And this, I feel, if we are able to solve, if the tourism, if the government intervenes and are able to provide solutions for these these bigger problems, I feel sustainable tourism, especially with regards to reducing plastic waste in the mountains, especially when it comes to trekking, can become more a norm and can be adopted as a wider practice. I think I'll stop here, and maybe I think we can take it up as more questions come in later.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the brief description. Actually, Ministry of Tourism is taking a lot of initiatives under the Sustainable Tourism National Strategy. So we have reduce, reuse, recycle as a separate focus point, and we have in line up with many programs to reduce all these things. And even ministry is planning to sign a global tourism plastic initiative charter with the UN, UNEP, United Nations Development Program and all. So let me welcome our next speaker for today's session, Srimati Shivanath. Shivanath is an award-winning travel writer and best-selling author. She has worked with indigenous communities around the world and has written numerous articles that have appeared in BBC Travel, National Geographic Travel, Washington Post, Travel Plus Leisure, Condé Nast Travel, etc. And she is currently pursuing a master's degree in sustainability and environmental management at Harvard, DCE, and founded Climate Conscious Travel, an impact consultancy that accelerates community-centric climate action in tourism. Let us listen to her expertise and the experiences she had to share with us. Over to you, ma'am. Shivana.
Thanks, Sai, and thanks to the Ministry of Tourism for inviting me to this important discussion on reducing the plastic footprint of the tourism industry. So, like you mentioned, I run an impact consultancy called Climate Conscious Travel, where our goal is really to accelerate climate action in tourism while also empowering local communities. This can take many forms, for example, working with the industry to reduce the Scope 3 emissions, using tourism to create climate change awareness, sustainability storytelling, etc. And today's topic is really relevant because what I want to do is reframe the single-use plastic problem as also a climate change problem. So I want to take a step back first and understand the scale of the problem. I was reading a report by the UNEP, and the tourism industry produces approximately 5 million tons of plastic waste per year, much of which is single-use plastic. And just to put that in perspective, that's equal to the weight of 1 million elephants in one room. So that's a huge problem in terms of how much single-use plastic the industry generates. So usually when we think of single-use plastic, everything from the free bottles that we get on hotels and flights to the toiletries that we have in our hotel rooms, it often, comes down to looking at single-use plastic as a littering or a trash problem. So we see mounds of trash by the river, we see mounds of trash in hill stations, and oftentimes we think the solution is to have more trash cans, encourage people not to litter, so that the plastic is out of sight and out of mind. But we need to look at the entire life cycle of the plastic to understand, what the problem really is. So first of all, where does the plastic come from? It's made from fossil fuel sources like oil and natural gas. And the production of the plastic requires a significant amount of energy, which contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and therefore to climate change, which is why I say it is a climate change problem. Secondly, it encourages overconsumption because, when you get food in those small packets or, shampoo in those small plastic bottles, you are just encouraged to use and throw rather than reuse. And this is something that the Indian government has outlined under Mission LiFE, which is to replace this use and dispose economy with a circular economy. Then the third is disposal, and this is not just about litter. So even if that plastic is properly disposed, there's only a 9% chance globally that the single-use plastic will be properly recycled. And even that recycling process is energy intensive, so it emits greenhouse gases in the process and again contributes to climate change. So what happens if the plastic is not recycled? It can end up in landfills or it can be burned, which essentially releases toxic air pollutants and again causes environmental damage. But to be honest, most of that plastic just lands up in the ocean. And I think there's a popular statistic again by the UNEP that the equivalent of one garbage truck of single-use plastic is dumped into the ocean every single year. And the tourism industry is responsible for a lot of that plastic, either directly or indirectly. So if we take a step back, the single-use plastic that we are just using once has both upstream and downstream impacts. And the plastic footprint of the tourism industry is essentially harming the very thing that tourism relies on, which is, it's harming nature, it's harming the environment, the beaches, the oceans, the mountains, etc., which is exactly why people travel. So we are kind of, shooting ourselves in the foot. So what are the solutions? Of course, there's individual action. Travelers making certain choices is important, but this is a much deeper and a much more systemic problem. It requires industry action and government regulation. And it always seems like these solutions are going to be very expensive and they can only be done in the West. But I think one great example is Rwanda. They first banned single-use plastic in 2008. And in 2019, they also banned single-use plastic like bottles and straws. And of course, there have been compliance challenges, but the implementation has been, pretty strict. And I've actually read reports that Rwanda's tourism has grown quite significantly since they started taking these sustainability measures. So in the long run, there is benefit for everyone in the entire value chain to take these steps towards sustainability. And I think here in India also, like we've had this culture to reuse and upcycle for centuries. It's only in the past couple of decades that we've become so reliant on single-use plastic. And I always think of the tourism industry as a protector of our culture and heritage. So I think the industry itself has such a big role to play to take us back to that time of reduced consumption and greener alternatives. So with that, I'll hand it over back to you, Naif, and answer any questions in the back.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for those insightful words, and thank you all for the having this beautiful session. As we come to the closing part of first part of the session, now we will have an open floor for a panel discussion. We have lined up with some questions related to the expertise of speakers. So, if uh, if you want anything to discuss in before that, we can have a discussion on that. Or else we'll move on to the questions. Yeah.
I think we
Uh,
can move on to the next.
yes. Yeah. Let us move on to the question session. The first question is pointed towards Srimati Shruti Sinha, ma'am. So you were focusing on this plastic waste management and plastic waste collections and all, and especially in tourism industry or any other industry, in order to support the recycling and the circular flow of plastic materials, we are facing a challenge of segregating and managing plastic waste generated by the tourism industry, especially. So, what strategies can be suggested to ensure that plastic waste is properly separated and managed in a way that supports proper recycling or to ensure a circular flow of a plastic?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. The first step, I think you've already answered the question in talking about segregation. That's the first step to efficient waste management. The current challenge we face, and this is despite having the solid waste management rules, which is kind of mandating that people segregate at source. And what we mean by segregate at source is basically to separate, I'm oversimplifying it, but separating the dry waste from the wet waste. So your wet waste would be any biodegradable waste or your food waste, and your dry waste could, again, dry waste is also further segregated into hazardous waste, and there's e-waste involved. So there's further segregation, of course, but dry waste is anything that is not wet waste. So currently, if we look at the kind of wastes that are generated and that kind of go onto the landfills or dump sites, are we see that 50% of the waste is actually wet waste. And challenges that they kind of, the dry and the wet waste are thrown off together. It's not segregated at source, which is at a household level. Even if there is awareness around it, somehow we have failed to achieve overall behavior change that kind of leads to people actually doing the segregation. We've not been able to achieve that. We failed at it. We have a law for it, but that, so Indore, for instance, has succeeded on it, and there is a reason for that failure as well. So, and that can be addressed, and that is if 50% of the waste can go away through community composting, or composting at, say, a RWA level. So if we have systems in place where the wet waste can be removed from the dry waste and then gets composted at a ward level or at a residence level, I think that's going to solve a lot of the problem. And of course, when you talk about the dry waste itself, within that, plastic plays is considered as a high value waste for waste pickers. So if you talk to waste pickers, all of them will tell you that, okay, plastics may be bad, but plastic is actually something that's generating most income for us. But again, when we look at that, when we did a study with them, we said that, okay, so what kind of plastics are generating an income for you? And none of them said that single use plastics were generating an income for them. So single use plastics can anyway go out completely, and there are solutions to address that. And we do have the law, but the plastic that works for them is high value plastic, something like PET is something that is highest income earning for waste pickers. So we're not saying that, okay, do away with PET completely, but that is exactly why, say, something like the EPR law comes in, which kind of holds the producer responsible and says that, okay, you are responsible for the waste you're generating. But even in that model, there is not a very clear definition of the roles of, say, the waste pickers. It's also not very clear about what happens to very fragile ecosystems like, say, the mountainous regions. Like, it doesn't really cover that kind of geographical landscape. So the law has to then incentivize, it has to take a carrot and stick approach, and it has to incentivize waste collection and plastic collection from, say, riverine systems, or from smaller towns, or smaller to like pilgrimage destinations. So I think that needs to be incentivized, and that is something that the tourism department can also come in at. Like, if you look at pilgrimage locations, you have to kind of, if there is a EPR law, then it's not just a Ministry of Environment law. Then the tourism department comes in and says that, okay, so we have these five major locations where we have major amounts of plastic, and these are not getting covered under EPR, so please cover them. So there has to be communication, and there has to be interaction between the different sectors of the government. But coming back to the single use question, we're always talking about alternatives that are, say, product based alternatives, but alternatives don't always have to be product based at all. So for example, if a group of people are, say, going out for a 3-day trip, and they know that they're going to, say, stay in a place, they, even if they're, say, going for a not very difficult trek or a not very difficult hike. I mean, I know that I appreciate, Lakshmi, that you addressed that question of, what happens on difficult treks or very very difficult locations when you're traveling there. But say there's a group of people going, then you can always kind of have your own utensils to carry. You can carry your own plate, you can carry your own tiffin box. I think that always helps. And um, so so systemic solutions and systemic alternatives also can be really helpful, like for example refill stores. So if hospitality industry, if small restaurants, or even, and of course the bigger ones, but even the smaller ones can really benefit from it if they go to, um, you know if we have refill stores, like the government grocery stores are converted into refill stores, where you say that, okay, if you're purchasing um, items, then you can always come and refill. You carry your own dabbas, carry your own utensils, but you refill it with us. Even if, and that can happen to, say, something like personal care items, also shampoo, soaps. So we're really promoting the idea of converting government stores into refill stores. Then we're talking about Bartan Bhandars. This is something we tried out in Uttarakhand. In fact, we actually set up Bartan Bhandars that were run um, by the rural women. So this is something that you can do. Maybe we can have these systems in villages where we set up Bartan banks with the help of the municipality, and these can be run by women, and that can give them livelihoods as well. And if you're traveling, for instance, and you need to eat, instead of buying single use plastic, you can rent this utensil out for your meal. And it kind of, and at a fee. So this this helps generate livelihoods. It helps you not use single use cutlery, and it also, I mean, creates a system of refill or reuse, which is not very product based, and not again going and buying a product. So creating these kinds of systems is very important. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Since India has already banned the single-use plastics, but still we are finding very difficulties to find alternatives for various single-use plastics such as styrofoams, food vapors, water bottles, sachets, and pouches that as you have mentioned. So my next question is pointed towards Srimati Siresha Chandana, ma'am. So as I've mentioned, all these kind of single-use plastics are mainly used in hotel industry, and IHCL is already working on a lot of initiatives they have taken, like Patya initiatives and Patya programs and all. So in this regard, what kind of strategies can be implemented or best practice can be suggested to reduce the consumption of these single-use plastics, and how can these efforts to be communicated to guests and customers? Sirisha, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks, Naif. Yeah. So yes, we've I think the last year in July it was mandated completely that there should be absolutely no use of single-use plastic. Indian Hotels actually started this entire effort in the pre-COVID time. That is when we had gone ahead and earlier in 2019 is when we had removed all single-use plastic from our food and beverage spaces. So if I may, like we also want to kind of break down and make sure that these are pieces we consume. So food and beverage has one of those larger pieces, whether it is packaging material, whether it is disposables of spoons, forks, whether it is PET bottles and many of those things, which and something as minor as maybe even cling film wrap the food to boxes in which food would actually be packed, etc. So these were things that we did away much earlier. What we've done is that we've started putting bottling plants in our hotels to ensure that it is glass water bottles which are replacing all our hotel use facilities instead of PET bottling waters, the plastic bottles which guests can actually take away. What we are doing is that now if you look, like in my mind, I think, how do you make something like this happen? One or two things is important. And as a corporate, I think number one, we've taken a call to actually eliminate something, not reduce, but eliminate. I think that kind of a mindset is important, because if you provide options in your own hotels and in your own kitchens, then the normal tendency is actually to move towards something easier. If you remove something from your inventory entirely, then then it's so much easier to actually make things happen. So let me give you an example. Like all our packaging material is recyclable material. So there is no option of using any kind of foil or any kind of plastic, etc. in that particular space. It is completely converted into recycling material, and to which the customer is also actually paying a certain amount of premium. But I think the education that you create, awareness that you create around what is it that you're wanting to achieve, the consumer is also happy to actually pay a premium around it. So something as simple as that when you are during the pandemic, we started a new business called Cumin. So it is home delivery service which actually goes out from our hotels, and that is where majority of plastic is actually seen in our kind of business, home delivery actually happening in plastic boxes. But all our cumin, our entire cumin range is biodegradable. And what we've said is that every time a customer actually places an order on the app, they have a choice to decide whether they even want to call for the wooden spoons and forks. Yeah. Only if they want to will it be sent. Otherwise, it will not even be sent. And it is a forced question. They have to actually answer. By doing something like that, you're actually creating awareness around why they are making certain kind of decisions. Otherwise, mostly you would just be dumping something like this away in a dustbin without putting your mind to what is actually going away into the dustbin. Yeah, that is the first one. Second is, like, I feel you should not have alternatives. You should just say this is the only thing that we offer. Yeah. Number two is that I also feel that everything we do should be in our in the flow of work. It should be someone is expected to do something special and different, because if you make it special or different for that person, it is effort. it is additional effort, and everyone is trying to maximize the time that they have on hand. So it should be dovetailed in a manner where it is in your flow of work. It should be made easy for employees as well as other stakeholders to actually put those systems and processes in place. So from that perspective, while we started with the entire water bottling plant piece, it was these were large water bottling plants when we actually got started in the pre-COVID time. They were expensive. They used to cater to our large hotels. But does it make sense for all kinds of hotels? It really doesn't make sense for all kinds of hotels. But because we started using them, even in the value chain, you had people manufacturers who came up with smaller ranges of these equipment. And now you have something of half the capacity to cater to a small time hotel. So even from a owner and an investor perspective, something like this makes sense, because they are not investing in something which is a white elephant, which is not going to give them the returns, but they are able to see that the money that is actually getting invested is giving them a bang for the buck. Yeah. So those kind of things actually need to be kept in mind. What we've also done is that while we've looked at the food and beverage space, we are also looking very closely at our entire in-room amenity space. And in our in-room amenities, bathrooms are actually one of the biggest spaces where you have those small, lovely bottles that everybody takes as a takeaway, and they are plastic. Yeah, so it's important that we kind of start cutting down on those particular pieces. There is plastic as a part of the toothbrush. There is plastic as a part of the combs, etc. So we've started looking for alternatives, and hopefully in the first quarter of this year, hopefully by June or so, at least our Taj branded hotels will switch to everything which is far more sustainable, including the packaging material, which will become biodegradable and not just it will become far better in terms of biodegradable quality. We still have oxy-biodegradable stuff which is actually being used, but it will become far better in terms of packaging as well as the kind of amenities which are going in. So while there is some things which are provided to us, I'm also thinking of what is it that we can do to be able to take this far more into the community. So one piece is that, yes, whoever comes to our hotel should be able to kind of experience these. But like it was mentioned earlier, that maybe not everybody comes to a Taj hotel, not everybody lives in a Taj hotel. So the ESG piece is so much more about what do you call your social responsibility also. So can we actually have great setups of clean drinking water stations in great high footfall tourist areas? I think that's the question we need to go back and ask ourselves. Yeah. So that tourists are actually encouraged to carry their water bottles so that they are able to fill water in different spaces to be able to consume. So if we are able to create the right kind of ecosystem for tourists, I think it will be far easier for us to be able to drive that change. Hygienic spaces from where clean drinking water can be filled in, something near the drinking water space which tells them about what is the quality of water, what is the clarity of that water, something which gives a sense of confidence to the person, that which tells the person, this is what I want to use. And actually, if you look at it, Naif, all youngsters today, they behave very responsibly. They do behave responsibly. You'll see that they are the ones who are actually carrying bottles with them. They are the ones who are wanting to consume water that they carry with them. Mostly they are responsible. We just need to create better infrastructure in the community for them to want to drive that kind of change. And corporates can play a role even outside in the community. So while hotels is one part, the industry can also play a role in the community to make sure that all our tourists operate in a lot more responsible fashion. So that's it, Naif.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for that insightful words. And yeah, of course, behavioral change is something is which is a need for for both from the demand and the supply side. And Ministry of Tourism has taking a lot of initiatives like we are about to launch the Sustainable Tourism Criteria of India (STCI) toolkits for
Yeah.
hotel industry, accommodation units, and on. And IHCL is already it's already is in touch with us and enrolling with us together for this
Yes.
initiative. And all, yes. And we have also a lot of other initiatives, behavioral change initiative like water toolkit preparation, water consumption preparation. All those under pipeline. And we have we are also planning to launch a My Bottle for My Travel challenge to encourage people to carry on their own water bottles. Yeah. So coming to the next question, like as we have mentioned, as Sirisha ma'am has already mentioned, when customers are paying for us, they are expecting premium and luxuries, and it's very difficult for us to make them like turn them to be a responsible travelers and all. So my next question is focused to Srimati Lakshmi Selvakumar ma'am. So you have mentioned about various initiatives taken by the India X to make responsible trekkers. So what are the challenges when you faced when you encouraging tourists to reduce their plastic usage during their trips to natural sensitive areas, and how can we overcome these challenges, like these behavioral shift challenges and all?
Thank you, Neil. I think I shared a little bit of the challenges early on in the first part of my talk. I'll kind of reshare the same challenges again. Uh, with regards to plastic pollution, or at least plastic waste, the biggest challenge is basically that you do end up seeing a lot of waste in our mountain areas. Especially, it is very sad to see you go all the way up till like 14,000 feet, 12,000 feet, and uh, and you do find plastic waste over there. And it is also all the more sad because it's very, very difficult to get them down first, because you don't have the necessary infrastructure to do it. And even if you do get them down, ensuring that they are properly disposed, or it even gets to a point where it can be recycled, is it's just a very far-fetched idea at this point of time, at least. So that's one of the reasons why we strongly believe that trying to talk about reduction is one thing, but I feel the biggest point we need to try and drive across to especially trekkers or tourists who come to these remote places is to focus on not generating this plastic waste in the first place. Because managing waste, especially in these remote villages, is not an easy task. It requires very systemic infrastructure uh, development, as well as logistical operations that has to go in hand, which I feel at this point of time is going to take us decades to put in place. So the focus primarily for us has always been to try and reduce the waste that we generate on our own trek, and especially with regards to what our trekkers bring in and what as an organization we generate when we organize the treks. In regards to what our trekkers generate, as I mentioned, there are three major areas where we do see trekkers bringing in waste. One is the bottle. Even though we very strongly recommend our trekkers to get in their own reusable water bottles, but one of the things that many trekkers do share as a concern has been the quality of water that they find during their travel. Now, this is a place where we do need a lot of infrastructure in place. We do need refillable water stations on a regular interval across the travel route to help in this cause. And on the trek, we do take care of ensuring that the water that we provide is purified. However, I think with the increasing footfall in every other place in terms of trekkers coming in, we cannot even assure the quality of water that is coming directly out of your spring or the river or even the source of your river. So even improving the quality of water that we are able to get over there is also a challenge. So we are working out on solutions as to how to go about it. We do use water filtration systems. However, I feel this is an area where we need a lot of improvement in. We also encourage trekkers to these days get water filters, especially water filters that can fit in within their reusable bottles, because that encourages them to not just practice drinking water straight out of the tap on the trek, or from the stream directly on the trek, but also to do that along the travel. So this is something that as an organization we have started promoting. The second source of plastic is what they bring in. Many trekkers carry protein bars with them. They carry a lot of snacks with them that they would want to munch on the trek. And we consciously encourage, by speaking to our trekkers a lot before they start on the trek, we try and tell them not to bring in any kind of packaged snacks on the trek. And we encourage them to get just open from kirana stores that you get, where you can buy, purchase out of an open, dry fruits and nuts that are very good alternatives for um, doing a trek. Right, so encouraging these very good alternatives that are healthy, doesn't come in packaged form, is something that we strongly encourage, and this is an awareness that can go out in general. So I think even something like how you mentioned, my travel, my money. So if I'm really not getting it right, I'm apologizing, but we need to do the same for even our snacks, because I think snacks are one of the biggest sources of plastic waste that you will see on the trek. Right, so I think that's an area where you can definitely promote, saying, why don't you carry your own snacks? Even we encourage trekkers to go and say, if you have something like hot chips, go buy. Even if you want to have that little bit of unhealthy food, do it by getting it fresh out of hot chips in an open form. Right, so that is something that we very strongly encourage. We also encourage our trekkers to carry their own cutlery. We provide food on the trek, but we tell them that they cannot bring in anything that is single use. We even discourage single use biodegradable cutlery for the purest. For the simple fact that even biodegradable waste is not very easy to manage in a high altitude environment, where the temperatures go down very drastically and can affect the composting process. So we insist on trekkers getting their own cutlery, and we ask them to reuse it, we ask them to wash it. So these are all initiatives that we have taken that has helped us reduce the plastic that trekkers generate on the trek. Outside that, we also work with certain dabawalas who are open to the idea to, we collaborate with them and we encourage them to prepare local food of that region. Like for example, in our Rupin Pass trek, we encourage them to make Siddu, which is a regional food of that place. And we make it a point to celebrate that with our trekkers. So the trekkers are more eager and excited to go try that instead of having Maggie in the mountains. So we need to create that narrative for not just that location, but I think that's required for almost every region of that place, because Uttarakhand, Himachal, all of them have very beautiful regional cuisine, which is unknown to people who are outside that region. Like, in fact, if you ask anyone what is the regional food of Uttarakhand, I think it's very hard for any one of us to talk about it on the top of our head. However, it's very easy to speak about what you will find very commonly in Tamil Nadu or Kerala or in Gujarat. You know what those regional foods that they are very famous for. However, in these places, at least, it's not very common. Neither will you find it in a dhaba. So working with them in promoting regional food that are also easy to make, that have a little bit longer shelf life and can be given out to trekkers on the trek, is something again that needs a bigger collaboration. It's not something that, okay, as an organization we do with smaller dhabas where we find in our way, but I think that also can be something that can be scaled up, because we do have treks along pilgrimage routes, and it's very sad to see that the majority of what you will find is either aloo paratha, or you will find Maggie, or it's bun omelette. I think we can do a lot better over there, and we can make the food also a very rich part of the travel experience that trekkers and tourists will get in these regions. So I think these are all big areas. If we address collaboratively, I think we will find a lot of solutions that will naturally bring down the usage of plastic in these regions. Because without these infrastructure in place, trying to reduce the plastic waste at source is not going to be very easy. And because trekkers who are coming out to travel they do need easy alternatives. So, and I would agree with Shirisha ma'am when she says that you need to make it as part of their flow. It's not something you cannot make it as something that they need to go out of their comfort zone. And the more we build in these infrastructure into the travel, how the travel sector or the tourism is being designed, I think the more adoption also becomes a lot more easier. So this is regarding the source part of it. Now there are already existing plastic waste in these mountains. So what do we do about it? Yes, I think encouraging, we do give that back to our trekkers. We encourage them to pick up waste. However, it's not the norm. I think it is again something that can be mandated with all trekking agencies, that you do provide a bag to all trekkers. You do encourage trekkers to pick up the waste, whoever waste is it is, and trekkers are more than happy to do it. I mean, when they experience mountains, they are very close to nature, they want to do something for it, and that's one of the best reasons why we want trekkers to go on this trek. Very rarely do you get to experience or build a relationship with nature, and trekking is a very good way to do that. And when you facilitate it very well, trekkers are more than willing to go out of their way. We've had trekkers who went and cleared an entire hot spot of waste, and all they needed was just that encouragement and the infrastructure or the means to do it. So I think creating that as part of how trekking is done again can also help bring down the waste. But then again, once you bring down the waste to the base camp, how are we going to collect it? How are we going to store it? How are we going to take it down to a place is again, I think, something that we need to look into. So these are all areas I feel there are solutions available, but I think implementing it in a larger scale is a place where I think all of us can collaborate and work together. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for those words. Actually, there is a shift from to. I mean, there are certain trends show that nowadays Indians or the travelers are being a lot more of conscious traveler than before. So these change, let this change all be a good catalyst for our better improvements. All of this. Then. So next question is to Mr. Srimati Shivanath, Miss Srimati Shivanath. So how can this conservation storytelling and community-led initiatives, which is your focus area, can be used to effectively engage tourists and inspire behavioral change towards reducing this plastic waste in the tourism industry and making them responsible travelers?
Thanks, Saif, and thanks to all the panelists for sharing very interesting insights today. So I think, like we've all talked about, Shiraz has talked about the importance of education, and Lakshmi also touched upon, how important it is to educate trekkers. So I think that's where storytelling is really powerful, because stories are how people connect with, the bigger challenges and kind of understand their own role in this ecosystem. So I think there are many ways to approach storytelling. Like for example, I think right now when we look at Instagram and we look at the way both how the algorithms work, but also the kind of influencers that travel companies are choosing to work with. I think there's so much power there to change the kind of content that is being put out on Instagram in the name of travel. We often see this pretty pictures or pretty videos creating this idea of FOMO, the fear of missing out, and encouraging people to travel more, which is great on one end. But on the other hand, we are just glossing over all the problems that are created by tourism, by the single-use plastics problem, and so on. And so it's really important for brands and the right kind of influencers to work together to make sure that the right messages are conveyed to travelers through their storytelling. So I think we all know the power of Instagram, being in this industry. And so we need to think about what kind of messages we're putting out there for travelers through a platform like Instagram and through the storytelling. I also think that as storytellers, there are so many different ways for brands and storytellers to work together. So one of the initiatives that I worked on about 4 or 5 years ago was in Spiti in Himachal Pradesh. So I had first traveled to Spiti about 12 years ago. And, as many of us know, it's a cold mountain desert, kind of like Ladakh's cousin, but with much lower tourism footfall, at least back in the day. But so much has changed over the years, again, because of platforms like Instagram, social media, travel becoming more accessible, more tourism companies setting up there and so forth. And so one of the obvious consequences of that has been the increase in single-use plastic waste in the valley. So when I was there in 2017 or 2018, we kind of did an analysis of what's happening in the valley. And it's quite ironic because there is a dumping ground, which is right next to Spiti River. So all the trash from Kaza and from other parts of Spiti is dumped here. And again, like Lakshmi mentioned, a lot of that trash is single-use plastic bottles, bottles of Coke and Mountain Dew and so forth, a lot of which is consumed by travelers. And then, of course, like the single-use package snacks like your kurkure and your fruity and whatnot. And since the dumping ground is right by the river, in the winter, when there's snowfall and then the snow melts, all that trash actually goes into the river. So it's a very sad situation. And while I was traveling, through Spiti, I was in a bus, and we were kind of stuck like in a landslide. So people were trying to clear out the landslide, and my co-passenger was eating, like a chocolate bar, and then he took the foil and the outside plastic cover of the chocolate and just threw it out of the window. And it suddenly struck me that when we have behaviors like this, we are just going to have mountains of trash instead of the actual mountains. And so this idea came about that why don't we build like an installation which is made entirely from single-use plastic and use that as a way to convince travelers first to understand their behavior and then to change it. So we built an installation called I Love City, but the entire installation is made with plastic that we gathered from the streets of Kaza. So it's made with plastic bottles, it's made with kurkure wrappers and all kinds of single-use plastic go into this installation. And it's a life-size installation that we installed right by the Spiti River. So it's this beautiful, you can see the beautiful mountains, you can see the river, you can see the installation, but you can also see all the trash that is being dumped in that dumping ground right next to the installation. So this has kind of become like a selfie point in Spiti, where people come and take pictures with I Love Spiti, but they immediately make that connection also with all this plastic trash that they are bringing into the valley. And it's really ironic because people are coming to Spiti, they are traveling all the way to this remote Himalayan region, and then they are buying plastic bottled water, which is Himalayan water that's packaged 500 kilometers away in like Chandigarh or Delhi, and they are buying this water in Spiti and then drinking it and dumping it there, rather than drinking the pure glacial water which has been tested in Spiti. So it is very clean water. It's available for drinking. It's available for refill in many places. And so we kind of wanted to bring out the irony of this through the installation. And if you Google I Love City installation, you can see pictures of what it looks like. But then we also worked with, so to unveil the installation, we organized the world's highest Instagram meet in City, where we invited travelers and the local tourism industry to be part of this initiative. And then we mapped out all the hotels and restaurants across City where travelers can go and refill their bottles at no additional cost. So even if you don't want to drink the glacial water that comes out of the streams, you can go and refill your water through an RO filter or a filter, and still have those options mapped out across your journey. So it's really about using storytelling as a way to connect with travelers, to give them something that they appreciate from a photography point of view or from an experiential point of view, and then also building that awareness to say this is a cooler way to travel. It's so much cooler to take your own steel bottle and then fill it in a glacial stream rather than go to the nearby shop and buy that plastic bottle and add to the trash that's already happened in this time. And so I think storytelling has such a huge role to play in changing traveler behavior. So I'll stop there and let you ask the next question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for those insightful words. We are living in an era where even global tourism, even WTO itself, is focusing on rethinking tourism to bring a paradigm shift from problem creator as industry to a solution provider. Yeah, so these kind of new initiatives, alternative initiatives, should bring will help or to achieve those objectives and all. So now we will have an open floor in this session. If audience have any questions, you can ask, or if any panelists want to raise any questions or any discussions, you can have it now. There will be an open session. I request.
Hi
I request.
everybody.
Yes.
Yes. Hi everybody. This is Gayatri Shrikant from Keep Nama Pondicherry Project. This is a unit led by UCP, and we have been associated with all over the country. We are doing several projects in managing waste, keeping plastics in the economy and out of the environment. So our flagship projects across India, where Hildari project supported by Nestle at Mahabaleshwar. Key project is being supported by Godrej Consumer Products, which is at Pondicherry, and Monar also we are doing. And Pondi project supported by Pepsico at Madura, and the Parikram project supported by Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and project with cleanup, project with avoid emission. So there were several kinds of projects that being taken over at all over the country, like how Shruti Sinha, Lakshmi, and Sriana were keen enough in sharing their thoughts on managing the waste more optimally, at the same time leading the way. Our co-founder, Ms. Neha Lahiri, and Suraj Nandakumar had a great vision and mission towards this circular economy project in the country. We aim to maximize the value of plastic to purposeful brands and entrepreneurs for pushing global waste management. So actually in Pondicherry, we aim to work on the three major sectors of diverting waste from the landfill and professionalizing the waste sector workforce and unlocking the sustainable business models for the ULBs to go for the productive IEC, like how Shruti was so mentioned and keen enough to enriching the student community on waste management and understanding and enriching process would happen. Vice versa, we go on to door-to-door IEC we do, and we go to the schools, we conduct workshops, we conduct awareness programs, rallies, and enriching them about what is dry waste, what is wet waste, what is single-use plastic, what is low-value plastic, high-value plastic, how this is being processed. And we have a sanitation park with the help of the ULB, Pondicherry Municipality. We own a sanitation park where there are 12 plus MRF workers have been associated, segregating the waste, and we are diverting the materials from the landfill, where that is being sent to the cement kilns and for laying roads and other processes are being done. So systematically and scientifically, we engineer plastic by segregating the collection, washing and recycling, compounding, converting, and again sending it back to the brands and the consumers. Again, collection is being done. So the circular packaging and the value of making this plastic economy being enriched at all the, not only household, not only student community. We continuously do cleanup drives in the Rock Beach at Pondicherry, which is a famous tourist spot. Every week we organize cleanup drives, inviting students, inviting homemakers, and the citizens and the tourists who join us for the cleanup drive. All the materials which is being collected from the cleanup drive were sent to the sanitation park. So now the city is being productively working on managing the waste which is being collected. And now, as a responsible policymaker, responsible tourism, we are enriching the tourism departments also to have two part of segregation, having blue bins, having green bins over there in every event, whatever they organize. Also, we join with them collaboratively, work together as a green partner or sustainable partner. We take an opportunity of 10 minutes or 5 minutes time to enrich the audience who are present there, and giving them valuable inputs on do not litter wherever you go, take your bottles, don't use single-use plastics and all. Incorporating with the ULBs, also we are trying to implement the solid waste management, the enforcement that can be done. Also, Pondicherry Legislative Assembly have recently ordered for the campus as zero waste campus. Also, we are empowering the student community and the schools also to turn their campus into zero waste campus. We give them a Bora bag to separate the wet and dry waste, and these dry waste are being collected every week from the schools and that are diverted to the sanitation part. The scientific approach of managing these waste in the city have taken up next level. Like there are streets and wards which have converted into 100% segregation is happening in the town. And also coming to the waste worker professionalization, we are working with the informal and formal waste workers in the town. Almost 450 plus waste workers we have reached out, and informal waste workers we have distributed safety gears, giving them PPE kits and giving them motivational training on how to wear gloves and why to wear gloves.
Um, I think we have lost. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Naif.
May I come in? Naif, may I come in?
Yes, Priya.
Good morning, everyone. I would really like to thank all the panelists for their insightful comments on the very important issue that India faces. I think it's not just the panelist responsibility or not just the CNA's responsibility to tackle plastic pollution. The solution to plastic pollution is a collective responsibility that all of us, all the members who are attending this current panel, or the ones who are joined through YouTube, it's a very collective responsibility. And rightly mentioned by the panelists, I think it's important to also understand what we as individuals, what is the difference that we can create. And I've tried this adopting a single-use plastic-free lifestyle, and I should tell you that it is very, very difficult. Given the limited resources or the challenges that we have, it's difficult, but I think it's achievable. I've been able to do it for the past 1 year, and I think it's very much achievable. If we ask like very simple questions, something like, where does my waste go? As rightly pointed out by Shruti Sinha, that waste management is a very important issue. And a question like, what difference can I create and how can I adopt a single-use plastic-free lifestyle, which includes carrying your own bag, carrying carrying your own water bottle and cutlery and a tiffin box to eliminate the snacks, the unnecessary packaging that comes with snacks or anything that comes. It breaks my heart when we buy organic or eco-friendly products that come in plastic packaging. It is very ironical, and I don't even know whom to ask for or affordable alternatives or eco-friendly alternatives to that matter, because all of us have a collective responsibility in this. During one of my recent journeys from mainland back to the islands, I spotted dolphins. But on the other hand, I also spotted plastic bottles lingering around the dolphins, and I didn't know whom to blame. I felt as a person, even I have the responsibility to own up and probably come up with alternatives. One thing that during the discussion that I really reflected was the need for incentivization, not just at the government level, but also at the level of all the players who are there, all service providers, and even at individual level. I remember collecting funds for HelpAge India when I was in school. And a few of my classmates, for me, it was the cost. But for a few of my classmates, it was a certificate that came with the collection, the medals that came with the collection. So I think the need for eliminating plastic should also be encouraged through initiatives that incentivize the shift in behavior, and which is only possible if all of us put in our best efforts. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Pridarshini. I think thank you for summing it up so well.
Thank you.
A very good morning to one and all. This is Kartika, Assistant Tourism Manager from Madhya Pradesh, from Ministry of Tourism itself. And I would like to thank all the speakers for keeping up, summing up all the points which we would concentrate on. So the points what Priya said, it's very true that to practice sustainability, being a individual and following things without plastic, you cannot buy things, you cannot. Mm, go for you cannot practice sustainability that easily in the environment where we are living in. So that's very true, and the point which she kept on incentivize things, that also is something which I wanted to tell to. So when we were talking, one of the speakers said that they are encouraging their trekkers to come in with their plates or spoons, and then they have to bring they should not bring any plastic filled snacks or anything. So in that case, I would request them if they can look into the trekkers who are following such initiatives, and if we can incentivize them or appreciate them through through social media or through anything, if they can connect to CNAST also, if we can promote that also. And then next thing is, ma'am, yesterday I would like to convey this point to CNAST. Yesterday I just went on to this market nearby for purchasing vegetables. So the thing is, I heard one of the vendors saying plastic is banned, but still they are giving plastics to the people. So I asked them, why are you doing that? So they just have to say ki we cannot afford to buy cloth bags or other stuff, but then when people are coming to purchase from us, they expect us to give them something where they can carry. Matlab these are people who just barge into the shop when they are going on the way through their way to home or to office or something. So we have this Swachh Bharat mission, and through that we are going around and we are giving cloth bags. So what we can do is we can think about distributing cloth bags to such vendors and initiate and promote cloth bags and not plastics. We can think about that, ma'am. You think about that? We can discuss on that. So this was the points which I was thinking about, and I wanted to say thank you to all.
Thank you. I just want to add a thought to this. Just, I mean, it's a good thing when you point out that, yeah, even I have seen that most of the vendors, especially street side vendors, still use single-use plastic, even though there has been a very strong ban. And yes, they don't really have an alternative that is economically viable for them. However, I'm also not very for cloth bags as a general way of distribution, because even they are very economically unsustainable, environmentally unsustainable. In the amount of resources that go into using one cloth bag is far, far greater than a plastic bag. So it is always better to just use bring your own cloth bags, bring your own cutleries or utensils, or even your bags to buy the vegetables or anything on the grocery side. And would be better if we kind of promote that line of thought rather than having to have cloth bags being provided. Even cloth bags end up getting used only once when it is being distributed so freely, and I strongly feel that it defeats the point of sustainability in a very different sense. Just my thought. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lakshmi, ma'am. Yeah, and adding to that point, you might have heard that last webinar, I'm sorry, last budget session, our Honorable Minister has introduced green credit that to be implemented in all over India. And we, from our tourism ministry also, we are checking our scope or various initiatives that can be linked with the green credit programs for these programs. And regarding this behavior, we can't I mean, even though single-use plastic has been banned from our industry itself, in our country itself, still some essentials like food vapors and all these are still existing in this area. So as per these global practices, what we focus is like nudging behavior. Instead of having this banning behavior, nudging behavior we should have to follow. That three steps which has been already mentioned: eliminate, innovate, and circulate. all those plastics which can be eliminated, we should eliminate, and all those plastics which can find an alternative solutions, we should design, and we should go for this innovation of what can be done on this process. And those plastics which cannot be which cannot find an alternative solutions and all, we should ensure a proper circulation of that product inside this, and avoid the virgin means avoid the use of virgin plastics in this kind of initiatives and all. Yeah. So any other another panelists or any other discussion, any other questions from the audience? Yeah, if no questions, and any panelists, anyone has to discuss on any of these issues, any of these questions raised? Okay. So thank you all the speakers for bringing us to a very productive session today. We hope this webinar will bring a constructive outcome, which can be used to further strengthen and make the Travel for Life action plan more robust. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, I would like to extend a vote of thanks to our eminent speakers and viewers for their active participation today. To our viewers, if you wish to participate in the upcoming webinar series, please reach out to our team and Sustainable Tourism India account on our social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. See you all for the next episode. Stay tuned. And also, if you're having any queries, you can mail us always to our scci at iittm.ac.in, that mail ID, and we will redirect you to the panelists if it is relevant to them. So thank you all once again for this.
Thank you, Naeem. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.